So obviously most of you guys are with Rising Coaches, but gotta always give a shout out to Rising Coaches, www.risingcoaches.com. Check it out. Definitely a great place if you want to rise in your career in any type of way and rise in your skill set, rise in your game, rise in your network, whatever it may be. Just $10 a month. Definitely check it out, and we are blessed to be a part of this Rising Coaches family. So First Breakfast Club, excited about it. Got my man Jimmie O, who's going to be dropping on the ones and twos, doing what he does best, giving us some expert knowledge from the NBA level. And then we're just going to have an open kind of community conversation. This is not about us being the experts only or us being the people that do all the talking. This is an open conversation. Obviously, we did some preparation on some aspects of it, but we want to make sure that we are, just all growing in this thing. So excited to have Jimmie on. Excited. Thanks for everybody for coming. Thanks again to Rising Coaches. So the format will be pretty simple. We'll kind of go in quarters. This is the pregame warm-up, but the first quarter will just be kind of an open dialogue. We'll kind of just bounce around the mic, thoughts on the game, and then I'll go into my Fab Five kind of breakdown of some of the breakdown aspects of the game. Then we'll go film breakdown, and at the end we'll kind of talk some more and talk about strategy. What things would you change? What things would you make? What adjustments would you make? Things like that. So again, the vision of it was just me and Jimmie kind of talking and really just wanted to do something more basketball-led now that we're getting closer to the season, now that we've all done different interviews and then seen different people present. We just wanted to be able to break down some of the stuff that's going on in the NBA bubble. So excited to have you on. I'll let Jimmie say a little bit of what made him want to, collaborate with me and me get on his nerves, blowing up his phone. But and then anything else he wants to add before we get started.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining on. I'm really excited to do this. It's something I had in the back of my mind to have something like this, and Brian kind of brought it to me about putting together something. We kind of just clicked on what we wanted to do. Just to echo what he said, like anybody jumping in at any time. This isn't us, like he kind of said, being a professor to a classroom. Like we want this to be a discussion, share hoops ideas, talk about it. No ideas off the table. We have film, we have ideas, we have, numbers to back up what we're talking about. We can kind of jump around a little bit, whatever the conversation kind of leads to. Like we have a structure, as you just mentioned, but please, at any point, something, we want to hit on, jump in, or shoot stuff in the chat, dialogue, share. I think that's what's beautiful about this game, and hopefully we can give back. A little bit about me. I've coached at high school, Division III, Division I, spent the last 2 years in the Brooklyn Nets organization. So a little bit everywhere, and hopefully I can share anything I can, and hopefully I can learn from you guys as well. I think that's what this is about.
Yeah, well said. I don't normally talk about myself. I probably need to do better at that, mentioning where I've been and done. But I'm working for Rising Coaches right now. I've been blessed to be a college coach for the last 16 years. I've been at 6 different Division I's. I've coached in junior college. I've been in the Mountain West. I've been in Conference USA, Southland, Horizon. So I've been blessed to be around this game and be around some greats. But really, this is all about giving back in community. So without further ado, let's open up the dialogue. You can unmute yourself. Just any thoughts on the matchup. Try to keep it concise. We'll bounce it around for about 10 minutes. Just any thoughts on the first couple games, anything you've seen, anything you liked, anything you thought somebody struggled with, whatever it may be.
Oh, I love Miami Heat. Like I've been telling people, they've been before the bubble. I feel like they was the most intriguing team because they remind me of that Detroit Pistons team to beat the Lakers, but not as good because they had 3 elements where they always played unselfish, they played hard, and they played defense. So I feel like that's like one of the most dangerous things at the pro level.
Absolutely. Well said, Coach. Well said.
One of the big things you're seeing with this series is the big evolution of, the big. You got guys like Bam Adebayo, and you're seeing it a bit in the Denver series with Jokic, is that if you can even just dribble it up a little bit and create plays, but with your playmaking ability, you open up so many things for your offense. And we're talking about positionless basketball. It's a term that's been used a lot over the past few years, but this is probably the first year, maybe the second year, that you're actually seeing legit positionless basketball be I don't want to say be successful, but come to fruition in a way where the vision is meeting the practice.
Good point.
Yeah, passing bigs makes that really makes it where positionless can really be maximized. So those two teams and those two guys, obviously, they're both playing in the finals to go to the NBA finals. So yeah, great point, Matt.
The Celtics haven't adjusted to the Heat zone offense. I didn't get to watch the game all the way through because I had a call on Thursday, but just going back and watching highlights, they haven't adjusted to the Heat's offense, and they're getting away from a high assist team, and Kemba starting to go one-on-one, Jason Tatum starting to go one-on-one, Jaylen Brown starting to go one-on-one, and you can't – it's really hard to beat a zone when you're trying to attack one-on-one, not getting into the gap. So I think that's a big thing that Brad Stevens hasn't adjusted to just yet, and finding some either continuity zone offense or different one-hitter sets to get the Heat out of that zone.
Hey, Caleb, they actually did adjust to it in the first half. They picked it apart where they set ball screens for Kemba to get in the lane and get easy shots for guys. Okay. What they did in the second half was they inverted the guys, the bottom and the top guys, and it made trouble for Kemba and Marcus Smart up top because they can't see. So they put Jimmy, Butler, and Crowder up top, and it changed the game in the third quarter. And it didn't allow – and they don't flash. They were flashing Marcus Smart from the bottom, putting them in the middle. They got to put Jason Tatum in the middle, better decision maker, and he can score from there instead of flashing Marcus Smart, who's so small. That's what they got to do. They got to find a way to get Tatum into the middle, and because the middle is wide open against that zone. They just haven't done it yet. And to say and to go back, like this series is as equal as you can get. It's going to come down to the last 5 minutes. 80% of games come down to the last 5 minutes. If you look at it, Boston has dominated this series for 6 out of the 8 quarters. You look at it, the last 4 minutes and 25 seconds out of the night, Boston has a 5-point lead. This is a 2-possession game. They're up after Tatum puts them up. They lose the game because Miami made plays. In game 1, Boston was up 6 with 3:36 to go. What does Miami do? They make plays. It had nothing to do with what Spoelstra was doing. It had all about making plays down the stretch. Wasn't no play calls. It was all defensive stops, and Boston just could not score. That's what it came down to. This series is as even as you can get. That's why these games are really close.
Yeah, well said. Well said from the NBA scout. Appreciate that breakdown, Lamar. That was great. Anybody else want to chime in on anything before we kind of just get going?
I think go ahead, man. Go ahead. You can go first.
Thanks. I think one thing that I noticed was that Miami's probably one of the more mentally tough teams I've seen in a while. Because there's stretches kind of what Lamar was saying when they're down 5, down 10. The Celtics are building momentum. They're scoring on. They're hitting all these tough shots. They're scoring on them, and then they just find a way to make a play. To get it done at both ends of the floor, and it's kind of impressive to me that they just stay they're so locked in no matter what. Tyler Hero can airball a 3 and then come back next time and hit one like he did in game 1 on Kemba Walker, a minute left. So just their mental toughness really has been sticking out to me more than anything.
Kind of hit on those 2 points. I think even looking at it now, the Celtics have had big leads both games. I'm curious to see if fatigue has been a factor. And it's 37-17 in a quarter and an even matchup. It doesn't really change. The players don't change. Is Gordon Hayward going to be that X factor? Because the Celtics really are rolling 4 guys that can really play playoff minutes. So is it going to be? Can he help them get over it? Because Ojelay's not provided much, and then Robert Williams gives you nothing offensively, something defensively. Cantor nothing defensively, but can score the ball and be a threat in the block. They need another guy. I think fatigue is really wearing on them right now.
One thing I would say is, we've talked about a lot of names, but the one name I haven't heard yet is Goran Dragic. Goran Dragic's work cannot go unnoticed. He's led the team in scoring in both games. And it's when you have a team that's well balanced, and then you have guys like Goran Dragic scoring 25 points. The first game, I think he scored 29, somewhere around there. And then Jay Crowder had 22 points. If you got guys that are typically not giving you that many points, starting to produce a lot more numbers, typically in comparison to what you normally see in the games and series that you've played before. But then adding those guys, providing that many points and stuff, that's tough to beat. I mean, even if it gets down to a close game, if you got guys contributing that much later on, it's going to start paying off as it moves forward. And I think, especially like you were mentioning with fatigue and being a factor, Miami's only played, before this they played 9 games. And then you've got the Celtics, who just came off a 7-game series. And then before that, what they played? They played in 4, so it was about 11 games. But just having to come off a 7-game series right into a team that's had some good rest, that really didn't, they beat Milwaukee in what they call a close game per se in Game 5, but the stress level really wasn't there, knowing Giannis Antetokounmpo is not playing. So just a certain rollover and less pressure. And now you're coming off a really close 7-game series that you really could have lost. And now you got to play a Heat team that's well rested, and then you've got guys contributing all over the place. It's a matchup for disaster. So yes, Gordon Hayward, I think, could play a role, but also just not having been in the playoffs this year so far could also hinder that ability to contribute to that max level.
And can we talk about how, like, you can stop all these guys on the Miami Heat and then they just throw it to the corner and Duncan Robinson just releases it in like a third of a second and it's just swish. This guy looks like he should be an accountant and he's just dropping 15 on you. That's demoralizing, man.
Yeah, another thing. Go ahead.
So the
another
thing is, I think Kemba Walker being a defensive liability kills Boston because you can't hide him on anyone. He can be as good as he wants to on offense, but Drazen is a bad matchup for him. So now you look at the game, Duncan Robinson struggles in game 1 because, 1, he's in foul trouble. Number 2, then he starts the game off great because you have to put length on him. Like when you saw Jaylen Brown, like he started off the game 3 for 3. Marcus Smart made a bad. If you look at the first defensive play, Marcus Smart went underneath on a dribble handoff. He buried the shot. Number 2, Kemba chasing him. You can't get nailed on screens. He ends up getting a wide open look because Kemba trying to chase and he runs dead into the screen. So you got to have Jaylen Brown almost on him almost all game, or it has to be somebody with length, or Duncan Robinson is going to get free and get shots. That kills them. But Kemba has to be a better defender, or they can't. I mean, it's hard to play him because Drazen is having a field day because Kemba can't stay in the front of him. It's just a bad match, and you can't put him on anyone else because, I mean, Kemba's one of the worst guards in the league at guarding the basketball. It's just an issue. I mean, and I don't know how much you know about that, Jimmy. I mean, from being with the Nets, well, he's not a good defender.
Oh yeah, it's a big part of the breakdown. You're gonna see a lot of it.
You guys like literally taking kind of what the film's gonna be, so I'm excited to kind of get into it and talk about it more, so everyone can kind of see. Like, I got the Marcus Smart going under on Duncan right away, like Kemba getting exploited time and time again, and I got the numbers to kind of talk about it. So I'm excited going forward.
Yeah, like you guys were saying, like I was thinking, I've been thinking that the whole time. Like the Celtics are top heavy. You know, like you said, they got those 3 or 4 that they got to rely on. Whereas Miami, I think Jimmy Butler's leadership is underappreciated. I have been blessed like the last couple of summers to work with D Wade in his camps, and Jimmy would come. Just something with Jimmy. The last summer, D Wade took about me and like 5 other guys. We went bowling. Jimmy was supposed to came with us. Jimmy decided not to come because he went and got another workout in. You know, he's just that type of guy. Now, even a situation in Minnesota was what not they said. But when you got your leader, which everybody knows is their leader, he's okay with getting 14 points one game or 40 points another game. But he's okay with those moments. He's going to be the one to step up in those moments for those guys. I think that says volumes about that team, which makes them really scary because they got anybody who can step up. You know, it might not be Jimmy. It might not be Duncan. It might be Gordon. You know, it's just like they're so deep and they're so unselfish.
Hey, Darrell, I'm glad you hit on the leadership aspect because, you know, I know it's not analytical, but there was a play. I mean, analytical as far as leadership, but there was a play in the fourth quarter. It was a big possession. Butler was open on the wing, and Tyler Hero saw him late and threw it out of bounds. It was a bad pass, but the way Jimmy Butler reacted, there was no negative body language. He just said, "Oh, let's get a stop." And I think that's huge because that's how that whole team, you know, responded. He could have reacted asshole because he's Jimmy, he's a leader, but he
Yeah.
didn't. He reacted positively. His body language was great, and they went up and they got to stop. So I think that speaks high volume about that entire team.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing that I thought about is the culture plays a really, really big role in this, I think, because I think the bubble is perfect for them. And because they're somebody, especially with that conditioning test, before you can even practice, they're going to come in there into the bubble. Everybody's ready to go from the get-go, and there's not that many games, right? And it kind of just thinking about it was with the Suns, for instance. They went 8-0, and I felt like last year they got into the season really, really good as well, the Suns. So feeling like their preseason, everybody's already coming there in shape, and they're just ready to go right away. So that might be also something in terms of, fatigue and this and the Celtics, having gone through a 7-game period as well,
Yeah, great stuff, fellas. We're going to shift to quarter two real quick. I got a Fab Five that I'm going to do every time around, just kind of breaking down a few things. So first, I'm going to kind of go to the numbers, some of the numbers. We won't go too analytical today. We'll just go straight stats. Game one, it kind of seems like Miami's really shooting the three significantly better, but they only made one more three in game one. Free throw was pretty similar. They both made 21 free throws. To me, the biggest stat from game one, 32 assists by the Heat, kind of goes to what Darrell was talking about, that unselfishness of what makes the Heat so talented right now, and everybody's getting to eat, so to speak. They're sharing the ball at such a high rate. They shot 47% from the field. Boston shot 44, but Boston 24 assists, which normally would be great, but compared to 32, not even close. So that's been a huge weapon for the Heat so far, their unselfishness and their ball movement. And then the first game, they dominated points in the paint, 48-26. Really every other stat was about even in that first game. I think following up to what Chase talked about, Gordon Dragic, man, he's really been – he's not as dynamic, he's not as big, but he's playing so much like how Luka plays as far as his savvy, his pace, his stop and go, his unselfishness, and then just – he's extremely efficient. 3 of 6 from the three, 11 of 19 from the field, and then 4 of 4 from the free throw line. He's definitely played at an extremely high all-star level in this series. And then Jay Crowder, you touched on too, Chase, was a huge X factor in that first game, again, 7 of 11 for 22 points. Not something that you expect going into that game, thinking that he's going to get 22 points to beat you. And then some of the parts for the Celtics that were struggles, we've talked about Kemba's struggles. He wasn't great offensively, 1 of 9 from 3. Tatum was 10 of 24 and 4 of 12 from 3. I think sometimes Tatum has a tendency to settle for threes. I think that fatigue may be setting in. But he took some really questionable shots late. I don't know if Jimmy has all of them necessarily clipped, but he took I think there was a possession where there was a big on it, may have even been Bam, where he takes a dribble side step back three in the clutch moments of the game. He could have got a better possession. So those are some of the easy stats from numbers from game one. And then game two, definitely some significant adjustments. One thing that was an eye-opening stat, the Heat got 18 more shots than the Celtics in the second game. Yep. One by 5, but got 18 more shots. You can't give a team with that much talent 18 more shots. You can't give any team this time of year 18 more shots and expect to win. The Celtics shot 50% from the field, so they've been efficient second game. The Heat shot 43 three-point attempts. They only made 4 more than the Celtics. So they got to the free throw line only 14 times, the Heat, but the Celtics got there 10 more times to the free throw line, but only shot 80%, but only made 7 more free throws overall. So that wasn't a big enough discrepancy to be able to make up for the 18-plus shot attempts that they got. The Celtics did win on the glass this game, but they did not do a good job on the offensive glass. They gave up 11. And then again, the same kind of X factor stat for me is the Heat still having 27 assists to the Celtics 19. They're just sharing the ball at such a high rate, averaging 30 assists per game. And then the major stat that the Celtics cleaned up was the points in the paint. They actually beat them points in the paint, 46-44, which is surprising. So great adjustment. Again, they were up 17, as we all know, but the 20 turnovers is what killed them more than anything. So that's kind of the round one of the Fab Five. My second one is really just asking you guys matchup-wise. I just let a couple people unmute, tell me what you think. So we just go matchup, position by position or matchup by matchup. So point guard matchup, Kemba versus Dragon. Anybody want to say who's winning that matchup and why? I'll tell you, we'll take 3 people.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let somebody else answer it. I want to see what anybody else got to say because that's like an easy one to me.
We already touched on it, but go ahead and dive in.
We all can see that Kemba is struggling, so that's a no-brainer. But I think people forget Dragic was like, he was pretty good in Phoenix, man. People forget that, and it's just, he had a couple of maybe like down years, maybe 1 or 2, and injuries played a part. But I think a lot of people forget that he was pretty good. Like he was no slouch, It's just that he's in the playoffs now, and when you're winning, it's totally different. Everybody knows that. When you're different, when you're winning, you're under a bigger microscope. So, people are shocked that that he's playing well, but like he was no slouch in Phoenix, man. So, Kemba, he better get it together, or they going home quick.
Coming in, well said, Coach Casey. Coming in, Kemba signs a big contract. He's the All-Star. He's on the USA team. And, Gordon Dragic is kind of on the downside of his career, even though we know he's had some good years.
Exactly.
So for him to be dominating this matchup like he is definitely one of the biggest reasons why the Heat is winning this series so far. So I think we all know that's unanimous. Dragons winning that matchup.
Hey, Brian, to tell you this, to give you the inside skinning, that's a mental thing with Kemba. He knows that Dragic is his – out of all the guys in the NBA, that's the worst matchup for him. He just thinks that's a mental thing. So that's the inside skinning. He just thinks he's too tricky. I mean, you talking about Westbrook, Chris, don't matter. He thinks Dragic is a bad matchup for him. So that's a mental thing.
He's very crafty, very crafty. I love it.
Yeah, and offensively, to Kemba's credit, he had a great first half. He played better in this game, but, it's just a total package. We'll talk about kind of his indecisiveness against the zone, whether it's defensively how he struggles. He's got to step up for him to be able to match up.
Now, Brian, I don't think it's as bad as people think it is, though. Reason why I say that, because y'all say point guard matchup. And I think the backup for Boston has been pretty good. His backup point guard has been. I just think they should play and balance him out a little bit better. I think he's been a little bit better as far as on the matchups, whatever. I just think they might, because Kemba's not going as well offensively, and we know he banks everything off of offense because defensively he's a challenge. I think the backup has been playing a lot better, and they need to get him some more minutes.
Yes. I thought they were really good together in game 1. I thought they should have.
Yeah. Yep.
Game 2. I'm with you.
Yeah, Kemba game 2 was 23 points, 9 of 19. Had a better offensive game, but this matchup he's still struggling in. The matchup versus Butler versus Tatum. What's you guys' thoughts on that one? I'll let Nick Graham tell me your thoughts on that. We got an NBA dude on here, NBA trainer.
What was that?
Tell me the matchup. What's your thoughts on who's winning the matchup between Butler and Tatum?
Man, to be honest, I'm here. I'm just here to listen and take notes. I don't feel like I've watched enough of that series. I watched the fourth quarters just because I was doing stuff with my book, But I mean, obviously I think that the one thing that I am intrigued with is Jaylen Brown. I think that what he was able to do last series. I think that if he can be more of a focal point, that helps Boston. I'm really, really intrigued in him. I don't think that enough people talk about him. I think that they talk about Tatum. I think they talk about Kemba. But, man, that dude is longer than his frame. Like, his arms are so long, and he's tough. He's a smart, competitive defender. So I think that, like, him being featured on both sides would bode well for Boston. in my personal opinion. I think I'm a big fan of his. I think he's kind of overshadowed by Tatum, though.
Sure, good stuff. Anybody want to share any thoughts on Butler versus Tatum? We'll take one of those, and then we'll go to the next matchup.
I personally think that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I personally think that, we get, even specifically when we look at like matchups, you want to go Tatum, Butler, Dragic, Kemba. I think, Butler recognizes last game, for example, I think he had 14 points in total, but most of those points, about half of them came from the free throw line. And, he's looking at it in the sense of how does the team win? Like the point that you had mentioned, don't care if you get 14, don't care if you get 40. How does the team win? So I don't have to take Tatum in the point matchup. Tatum had more points than Butler, but we got Goran Dragic getting 29. We got somebody else getting 15. We got somebody else getting 10, somebody else getting 12 or so. How do we win this game? And if I'm, taking you more so out of a rhythm rather than just looking at how many points, does so-and-so have? If Jason Tatum, I'm just looking at it, Jason Tatum made no three-pointers in the last game. He went 0 for 2 from the three-point line. If I'm taking Jason Tatum off the three-point line, if I'm preventing him from getting those rhythms, those places he likes, whether it's that little side step or step back, get a little three going, get that rhythm. All right, come on, let's get it together. Kind of rallying them back in. If I'm preventing him from getting those shots that for the Celtics are kind of like those turn-on shots, like, all right, let's get it back going. That's where I feel like his impact really stands out. And even from a leadership perspective, hey, we got to get a stop. Let's prevent these momentum shots is what I call them. Prevent these shots, and let's continue to get the ball moving. And as long as somebody scores, he's satisfied because he just wants to win. Now, if he has to take that shot like you saw when he hit that corner three, that corner three against the Celtics, and it's like people pulling off shots like that, he's willing to do it. But he's about let's win. I don't think he's really as concerned per se in that one-on-one ISO ball. I got to beat Tatum in order for us to win the game. Let's win the game because they're very top heavy. So as long as they're winning the game and you're preventing those momentum shots, which he had the ability to do in that game, and not letting your best scorer get those momentum shots, I think they'll be in a good spot.
I think the important thing about the last two matchups we're talking about is it's not so much the points and the box scores, what you see. I think both Butler and Dragic impact winning. Yep. And I think that's the most important thing more than anything. Like, they don't need to score, but they just, when their number's called, they're ready to answer. And, Butler on defense, Dragic on the right plays, I think they're winners at the end of the day.
Peyton, I know you had something to add.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Chase said, if you look at the stats, then you would obviously think Jason Tatum's winning that matchup. But like he said, it's because Jimmy Butler hasn't had to be a primary scorer. We've talked about Kemba's struggles. Jason Tatum has had to pick up the slack in that regard. If you just isolate the last 3 to 4 minutes of the game, Jimmy Butler has made every winning play possible. Like, you look up and he's involved in every winning play, whether it's on the defensive end, making big shots. And the biggest number or stat is Jimmy's up 2-0. So I think if you just isolate it in that standpoint, then Jimmy Butler is definitely winning the matchup.
Great job, Peyton, on that, and Chase as well. I didn't explain that well, but in the matchup, we're talking about impact and winning. We're not just talking about points or who's winning the matchup as far as impact and winning. So you got to go with Butler because they're 2-0. Now, if Tatum's able to convert that dunk at the end of the game, maybe we're having a different conversation right now. But right now, Jimmy Butler's definitely had the bigger impact.
I think Bam Adebayo would have a broken wrist if that were the case.
Right.
I don't think he'd be in the series.
Who's winning the matchup between Jaylen Brown and Duncan Robinson? So Duncan Robinson obviously didn't play a lot in the first game, but was a major factor in the second game. So curious you guys' thoughts on so far who's winning that matchup.
I feel like if you go on that, like with Duncan Robinson and Jaylen Brown, because I feel like we're just going to start in lineups, and it's probably Jaylen Brown because he's been on the court a little bit more. I mean, yesterday Duncan Robinson was hitting a lot of shots. He has a big impact in that game. He hit some key threes and stuff. I feel like it'd be a little bit more interesting if it was Tyler Hero versus Jaylen Brown, like who was more impacting, because when Tyler Hero gets in the game, he's actually turned into like a fairly good playmaker. Like, they run the pick and roll a lot through his hands, and he's set up Bam Adebayo a couple times, found some open shots. He's open guys. He's hit some key threes. But if it's like Jaylen Brown, Duncan Robinson, I'd probably go with Jaylen Brown more because he's a little bit better on the defensive end to make some plays, and then he's scoring a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah, I think it's close. I think Duncan Robinson, when he's in, Dragic has been placing that he creates when they put him in the spot where his guys attack on the wall has just opened up so much in the Miami's pick and roll stuff that I think, I don't know the plus minus. I haven't seen it, but I would imagine Duncan's is really, really high for the series.
Yeah, Duncan's is game 1. He didn't play a ton. He was +2. He only played 17 minutes. In game 2, Duncan Robinson was +7. Played 29 minutes, 18 points, 6 of 12 from 3. Jaylen Brown's he was 21 and 6 last game, 8 of 14. He was -2 plus-minus. And then game 1, he had 18 points, I believe, 17 points. It was -6 on the plus-minus. So hard to say. Obviously, they're not winning, so it's probably a pretty close matchup. But again, just because the Celtics are kind of on the downside of this, you probably have to give a little bit of the edge to Robinson, even though statistically Jaylen Brown has been better. And then the last 2 is Crowder versus Smart, which is kind of that tough man, intangible guy. I think we all know, even though Smart's played well the first game, Crowder's been a huge X factor for him. And Smart, to this point, I know Jimmy's going to break this down in film, but first team all defender, but he's not been very good defensively so far in this series. Again, I don't know if that's the fatigue factor. We'll kind of get into that. And then Bam versus Tice, I think we all know who's winning that matchup. With Bam Adebayo playing at such a high level, might arguably be, we were talking about this before the Zoom, he might arguably be the best 5-man in the NBA. I mean, outside of Jokic. If you talk about all around with his passing, his rebounding, his motor, his energy, and maybe not the best, but maybe the most valuable, maybe not the most talented, but definitely he's getting up there. And then bench, I think we all know Miami's really winning that. And then coaching-wise, I think we have to give the edge to Miami being 2-0 too. So that's number 2 of the Fab Five. My X factors, number 3 is the X factors. I think Miami's zone has been an X factor. 2 close games, 2 possession games, and an overtime game, 1 possession game. I think the zone has definitely caught them some possessions. It's definitely made Boston have to think more than what they probably would have liked to, and they've struggled to get it against it consistently. They've struggled. And then the depth for the Celtics, I think, is a huge X factor. Not having Gordon Hayward is killing them because they don't have another guy that can really be the 6th starter. What Miami has in Hero, he's played 30 minutes in both games, basically, so he's basically another starter. And I think that's a huge, huge part of what the Celtics are struggling with. You got to think back, too. All 3 of those guys played the USA games. And although we had a break with the pandemic and they got to recharge their bodies, they just had such a wear and tear, having to make so many plays for their team and not having none of their guys off the bench are playmakers either. So it's not like even with Hero coming in and making some plays off the bounce, the guys off the bench for the Celtics are really just kind of either bigs or Wanamaker, who's a catch and shoot 3 kind of guy. So he's not a playmaker. So I think fatigue and depth is hurting them. Number 4 in the Fab Five, just beyond the numbers, the eye test, the 2 things I kind of wrote down is just that fatigue factor for the Celtics. They have to find somebody who can give them a lift. I don't know if it's Carson Edwards. I'm biased. I'm a Texas guy. Carson Edwards. We actually gave him his first offer at Lamar back in the day with Coach Price. But Carson Edwards is an elite level scorer. I don't know if he can help them, but they need some kind of a boost to get more depth from the bench. They're not getting anything. Their guys are playing 40-plus minutes and having to make all the plays. And I think that's part of where the second half collapses are going from is just they just don't have enough in the tank to keep playing at that high of a level. And then I think Miami, you touched on it some, Darrell, and some of you other guys have, but just their collective belief. They're just playing at such a high level, similar to somebody talked about the Phoenix Suns at one point in time. They're playing so well since they've been in the bubble. They're sharing the ball, again, averaging 30 assists a game. I think they're just really finding their groove, playing their best basketball. They remind you of a college team almost like a UConn when Kimba did play for them, that's playing their best ball at the right time and just getting hot. They remind you of one of those teams. I think they're 10-1 in the playoffs so far, and just playing, like I said, at a high level. And then the last of the Fab Five I wrote down is just the turning point in both games. I think the first game, to be honest, could have went either way. If Bam Adebayo doesn't almost break his wrist and get that block, then Tatum's dunk would have been the play of the game, because it would have won in the game. But because Bam did make that play, I have to say the block was the turning point in that game. And then I thought Jimmy Butler at the end of the game, kind of like you guys have all touched on, it's all about winning for Jimmy. And that steal he made where he got the deflection, goes out of bounds, saves it, comes back in, gets the dunk. I just thought that was a turning point in the game that led to the next steal. Even though they were still down, I thought that was a huge, huge turning point for the game. So, those are the Fab Five I have kind of breaking down the game. And then we'll go straight to Jimmy in quarter three with the video breakdown.
Hey, Brian, can I say this? Because this was interesting.
Yeah. Please.
No. I saw Crowder at the end of the game. Marcus Smart throws the ball out of bounds. Crowder picks it off, deflects it, runs out of bounds, comes back in. He's the first one to touch it. They go in and score the layup. I don't even know how many people saw that. But I could swear that's a rule that you can't be the first one to touch it if you run out of bounds and come back in. I saw that play. Maybe I'm wrong, but I definitely saw that.
Yeah, that was a huge play in the game. I was thinking about that after the fact. I didn't think about it at the moment, but I was thinking about that after the fact. We'd have to get a referee on the line to give us the interpretation on that.
Brian, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, please, Matt.
The one thing that I noticed, and it kind of plays to everything that you've been talking about as far as the assist differential, the points in the paint, and just the way the series is going, is I think that Miami, from all the teams that I've seen, has been the best off-ball cutting team I've seen in the whole playoffs. And I think that, number one, they don't have as good one-on-one scorers as the Celtics, but because they're never playing against a loaded defense, because the guys are flying around when guys have the ball, they're able to score because the game is easier, because you're not playing against a fully loaded defense, whether it's a zone like Miami is playing or just their man-to-man defense. The Celtics aren't getting as many easy baskets as the Heat are, just because from the cutting, and that's getting them points in the paint. Somebody has the ball on one side, somebody flashes from the 45 or flashes from the corner, they get an easy layup, or that cut causes help, and then they kick it out to somebody for a wide open three. All those plays over the course of the game are adding up, and then you're asking the Celtics to go one-on-one, again, whether it's against the man defense or the loaded defense. So even when you talk about the one-on-one matchups, the Celtics aren't really playing one-on-one, because the Miami's defense is loaded up, whether it's zone or man, because the rest of the Celtics aren't moving. They're just standing there. So they're never playing one-on-one, where the Heat get a little bit more opportunities to play one-on-one, because either you're getting a cut or the offside defenders have to respect the cut, so they can't load up on you and help when a play's being made. So I think that's one of the big differences in the game. And then what Lamar and everybody else is saying, that when the game is close in the fourth quarter, Miami's just stepping up and making plays. But even the bench scoring, it's not necessarily like the bench guys are coming in and just cooking guys one-on-one. It's, they're getting in the flow of the game and able to contribute because they're getting easy baskets or creating easy baskets for other people. So I think if the Celtics were to do a little bit more of that, whether it's against the zone or the man, then I think they'd have a little easier time making some of those plays. But everybody's just standing around watching when one person has the ball, and it makes it easy for the Heat. And that's why the zone is playing right into their hands, because they know they're just going to stand there. So all they have to do is just load up.
No, I appreciate that, Matt. Well said. And I think two parts that you said that I'll follow up on before I pass it to Jimmy to break down the film is, number one, I'm surprised a little bit with Brad Stevens that they haven't had more movement or more continuity type actions. Just because.
And I do know there's something that they emphasize, and it's something that they talk about. Just I just know that, but they're not doing it. So
yeah, they're not.
They're not doing it.
Even in the crunch time in some of those Toronto games, they were saying one. They just kind of going ISO ball, and everybody's standing around watching guys go one-on-one. But the second part you touched on, Brad Stevens actually talked about this going into the series in an interview. He said that Miami is the most resilient team of the Golden State Warriors with their cutting and their shooting. as far as, and he didn't say this, but we'll see this in the breakdown with Jimmie too. But just the post elbow stuff they're doing with Bam, how elite he is as a passer to stretch. It reminds you of Andrew Bogut back in the day when he played for Golden State and how they did so much stuff out of the pinch post. So I think a lot of credit given to them, and they're so good, even like Denver, at cutting off the ball because they know they're going to get it from him. And those bigs, there's no rim protection because he's got the big away from the basket. So I think that's a huge, huge asset for what makes them great, is they do get kind of those random contributions like the Golden State Warriors used to do. Sean Livingston comes in, has a big night. Iguodala has a big night. Hero can have a night. You have role guys that are having 20-point games and 17-point games that help you win games, and that's what the Celtics are not getting. So well said. So Jimmie, go ahead and take it over and get to the video portion of quarter 3.
Just throwing this out there. Let's do a 2-minute timeout. If anyone needs a refresh on the coffee, or you want to grab, like Brand said, he's trying to grab another donut. Let's do that real quick. You guys gonna make a bathroom break or something like that?
No, it's halftime.
Let's come back in 2 minutes. We got halftime, and we'll bring it back with some film and be ready to talk about what we see. Ready to jump in?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, cool. So a lot of different categories we'll cover. We'll kind of hit on pretty much everything that's been talked about. If you guys have anything at any point, just throw it in the chat, shoot it out, whatever you think is best. We can kind of talk about it. Talking about game 1 and 2 breakdown and kind of looking ahead, what we saw, things you want to talk about. This, I thought, set the tone. It's just going to be 3 clips in a row. Miami was down 15 beginning of the third quarter, and Jimmie goes to the line, makes his free throws. I'm going to kind of fast forward through it. Boston comes down, turns it over, offensive foul. Tatum clips him. You'll see it. And just like for me, like the body language that the guys show is big. And so, score, stop, score right here. Gets caught behind. Duncan Robinson gets 3. And then again, Boston comes back down. And then bad shot, rebound, foul. I think the game goes from 15 to 10 with the ball. That, to me, set the tone. Even though, you're still down 10, it wasn't the turning point of the game. But just the mentality and the mentally tough part was important for me. We kind of hit on this, the zone offense, go through some film, seeing this from Kirk on Twitter, and you kind of see the numbers here throughout the season. So I wanted to look at it, game 1 and game 2, so you can really break it down. Game 1, they were pretty efficient against it, right? Like you see 1.18 points per possession. If you watch those possessions, it is not good offense. It's late clock, 3, bad foul, whatever, get the ball out, score 13 points in 11 possessions. That's pretty efficient. But if you watched it, you probably knew game 2 that Spo was going to come back to it, and he did. And the numbers at the bottom kind of talk about what it actually looked like. 24 possessions, 27 possessions, 24 points. They had 6 turnovers. It's not good enough. And we'll kind of get into the film right here a little bit. And the Celtics keep running this kind of through action, kind of what Lamar talked about, trying to get Kemba in a ball screen situation. They overload it. The offense isn't even set. So even if Marcus is open, like he's trying to get to the corner, Kemba's just slow reacting. And you get into this 4-round-1 look, and it kind of just plays into the hands. What coach is talking about, it's not one-on-one. They're going against a loaded defense here. This is what it looks like the whole time. Bad pass, turnover. Same thing. This is game 1, and this is when they were efficient. So, again, this is a little ATO trying to get Kemba going downhill or for catch and shoot. Fine, he gets in the teeth of the defense, but there's nowhere to go. Again, 4-round-1, fine. They're loaded up. He's too small. Turnover, deflection, all the same. I'm not going to re-hit a lot of the same thing, kind of the same exact movement, the wheel action. And again, loaded up, nothing going. I thought this was pretty indicative of like what their defense is supposed to look like. They're just morphing kind of to match up, but stay in a zone. And you can see it, right? Until they bump off, they're doing a really good job. Grant Williams isn't going to really hurt them. There's nothing going on here. It's just bad offense. Anybody want to touch on any of the points that they've seen through zone, or what you think it should be looking like game 3, what Miami's going to do maybe differently in their zone, or what Brad's going to do differently offensively? Please jump in.
Jimmy, I see Miami do a great job of closing out, man. Like they do an excellent job of just closing out. I mean, mind you, Boston don't got like shooters really out there, but they do a great job of just closing and recovering real well.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. I don't know if you said it or Brian said it, but I agree with y'all. I'm assuming what Boston needs to do is probably get Tatum more catches and like scoring position, probably the higher post, and just go more through him. I think that'd be like their biggest adjustment is just like he's got to have the ball in his hands. He's the most, he's the one who causes the most threats. So if you get him a high catches, whatever, then he's got a chance to either do work or others can feed off of it.
I totally agree with you on that because he only got 4 shots in the second half. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
What people don't realize. But he turned down some shots as well. And that's why if you saw one time, I don't know if you got it, but Smart caught the ball in the high post, threw it out to him. He had a wide open look. He threw it back to Marcus. You have to get him on the move against his zone. And it's going to be whether you flashing him to the zone, or you even have to play him up top. You can't put Kemba up top against his zone when they invert Crowder and Jimmy Butler because he can't see over the defense. Now you got Kemba attacking from the wing more so than trying to attack from the top as well. So you may have to put Tatum up top on that. And one other thing is they did a great job of going that 2-2-1 zone press to slow them down so that they could start the offense probably at more of 17, 18 seconds than to really started at 20-21 in that game as well.
Yeah, I think to follow up, great points, both guys. I think to follow up, just their pace of play when they play against zone, they think so much. The ball sticks even more. So it's almost like in college, we all know if it gets to a certain point, you're going to run a shot clock play. It feels like Boston is just the ball sticking, and they just throw up a shot they really don't want by the end of the shot clock. So I think just their pace of play in the zone, whatever they're doing, their movement, their ball movement, their attacking. I think somebody talked about it earlier. You can't just not attack gaps. I just think from an offensive standpoint, they have to be more aggressive. And in Miami, I mean, they've done such a good job in it so far. I think, Lamar, you touched on it, inverting the zone and putting Butler and Crowder at top with bigger guys. I think they've been creative in how they've gone about it. So I don't know that they need to change a lot, but just keep throwing it at them and keep slowing them down mentally so where they can't play the way they want to play.
I think a really good point was – oh, wait, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, Chase. I don't know if they're thinking good to great all the time, and that's why they're almost sort of passing up shots. But, when I watch the video, I'm kind of like, that's the best shot you're going to get in this possession. Why are you going deeper in the shot clock, driving into nothing? That's a good one. Take that one. That's what we want. And just like Lamar said, Tatum turned down some shots. And I'm like, you're kind of the focus of this offense right now. You should be shooting that shot. It's against a long closeout. It's probably the best one we're going to get.
I'm with you.
It's a really good point. I think, even when we were talking about, Tatum turning down certain shots, I think it really comes back to a point I mentioned earlier about he needs to hit a momentum shot. He has to get something that gets him going because if he doesn't, it's impacting his confidence. And, we look at, Jason Tatum's a really good young player, but I think if you look back at that Butler-Tatum matchup per se, experience and then confidence. Jimmy Butler shoots that shot in the corner to get right before Tatum hit the free throw that got them into overtime, and that was I think that was game 1 or game 2, one of the games. He hit that shot to force overtime, and it's like, look at the confidence level to pull a shot like that from the corner, somebody standing literally right next to you in front of in your face area, and having to get that confidence going for Jason Tatum is huge. At some point, you got to get him moving, got to get him in that rhythm so that he's like, all right, I can do that. So when you pass him the ball and he's wide open, he's not like, well, let me pass it back. Because when you get to a point where, you get outscored 37-17 in the third quarter, and it's like, oh man, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to keep taking us out of the rhythm that we're already out of. You got to get something to get them going and something that, gets their confidence moving so that they're able to contribute and then actually turn the game around and not get outscored 37-17.
I think that's a great point, and it kind of leads into this. I think the Heat players are a little bit more intuitive. I think they're better under duress. Like Dragic is poised, Hero poised, Butler poised. Kemba, Jalen, and Tatum kind of look like a little tentative. Like we're talking about the other one. I had many clips of Kemba not pulling the trigger wide open, but then they settle for ISO shots, and it's going to lead into Tatum. So this is going to be game one, and I think this is what kind of affected Tatum into game two. And the first three clips are going to be designed ATOs for Tatum. And when he knows it's for him, he's a different player for me. Like it's not a great shot, right? Step back, mid-range, not a great shot that you want, but he knows it's for him. He's getting his own, great. Again, middle of the floor, ISO, he knows he's going to get to the rim, design. Then the last one, this is the block that everyone talks about, right? 50-50 play, dunk or block, whatever. He was 2 for 3 in these plays, designed ISO calls. He slips out, drives it. We know how it ends. But what I found interesting is his other 5 ISOs that he had in this game that just happened organically, kind of what we're talking about, like the shot clock type plays. He was 0 for 5. And just he's not creating his own. Like, they're not going to bail him out right now, especially at this point in his career. And, these are the shots, like, that's a 3-point game. Like, like that's probably not what Brad wants. And, again, 3-point game. Is this what you want? Like, probably not. And again, end of the game. We know how it ends. So I think either Brad needs to start dialing stuff up for him that he knows a familiarity on the court of where he's going to be in attacking. Because if he's just on an island and shooting a step back, this is probably going to be a 25-20% shot. Probably not going to be what they're looking for. And again, more plays. Something Miami does in their man-to-man defense is just double teaming Kemba, keeping out of his rhythm. I think you need to see more of this from Boston. Now, the spacing, they got Wanamaker, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, so 4 pretty talented perimeter players. No Grant Williams, no Jimmie Oakman. Get rid of the ball. Marcus needs to lift early and make the play. It ends up in a 3, but they need to be a little bit more crisp, get a good shot. The thing that happens with Grant Williams out there and Oakman, they don't respect him in the perimeter, neither would I. So, like you throw it back to, no offense to Grant, but I'm not respecting him catching the ball out there. Like, we're not stunting at him. Like, we're not going to chase his ass around. And then Tatum too. Actually, let me get into this. And you see this in the overtime here. They started switching on Kemba, not just doubling him, but just containing him. And he wasn't able to do anything with it. As great as a player he is one-on-one, he just couldn't get it done. And then, Jay Crowder switches on to him, key part of the game here. They're up 2, and Crowder locks him up. So there's adjustments within the game already that Spo made from this one, whether it was blitzing him, hedging, getting back to him, or, straight up switching it in crunch time, and they got the stops. And you've seen this right from the get-go with Tatum, and this is off the screen, not even a ball screen, but they don't want him to attack, right? He should be rolling hard. He's looking for the short roll. This should be a lob, but, turnover. Tatum's going to be better. We'll jump into this, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but I think the Celtics need a solution to their backup 5. We'll talk about Miami's rotation a little bit as well. Robert Williams played game 1, provides defensive lift, can protect the rim a little bit. Cantor can't do anything defensively, and offensively he provides a spark. I think he had 9.6 rebounds in 10 minutes in game 2. While that looks great, this is what it looks like defensively. Right? This is just looks like a highlight reel for Bam Adebayo. These were back-to-back clips, right? Just no presence. Just too easy. And then, at the end of the game, people watch, they put Grant Williams out there, fine. You want to try to switch 1 through 5 or whatever, or you're in drop, Dragic is going to go right by. We're going to talk about Miami's rotation a little bit, and then we'll kind of open it up a little. And so I want to look at the lineups, and I'm not big on just the sample size of 2 games. That's not my whole deal. I'm not trying to make a narrative of this. But their 3 top lineups, you can see that Butler, Crowder, and Bam are all involved. If you look at the Celtics' top 4 lineups that have played multiple, 60 minutes combined, they're all negative. This is, you see the 6 guys that we talked about. Dragic, Robinson, Butler, Crowder, Bam, and Hero. It's those 6 guys that are going to beat you. So I do think the Celtics are going to need Hayward to spell those minutes from the other guys. With that said, right, they're still playing Derrick Jones Jr. played the second half. Iguodala and Nunn did not play in game 2 in the second half. They put him in. However, I don't know if he's the answer either, right? Like, fouls Tatum on a 3, dumb foul, right? 3-point game, and he fouls out here. And that just ruined – not only is it a foul, but you had the chance to get 2 for 1. Instead, they give a 3 for 2 situation. That's really big. Like, you're given 2 points and an extra possession. You know, theoretically, it's 3.5 points, however it shakes out. It's just something to kind of talk about. Then you got Kelly Olynyk as well. Like, I'm sorry, but you're not Duncan Robinson. You're not taking that shot from me. Especially, like, you're up 7 here, fourth quarter, right? You probably want to get a really good one. Olynyk slips out. Like, this is – I'll slow it up, but, like, this is a really, like, suspect shot for me at that time. I think they got to be better. But that's kind of what I'm seeing as far as, like, the Celtics need that problem with the 5. And if Miami can add any boost to their bench anyhow, you know, I think that's only going to really, really elevate them. What do you got?
I have a solution to the Celtics 5 issues, but it's not there. It's Al Horford. I mean, I really think that, you know, you look back at it and it's like, now granted, Al Horford did get a nice contract when he went over there, so you can't really blame people in those respects. But, you know, when you leave a place, and it's, in my personal opinion, it's always kind of been this issue for Al Horford. You see, the question is, does he want to play the 4 or does he want to play the 5? And, you know, he was playing the 5 for a long time in Atlanta, in that area. And then Dwight Howard comes in. He's like, oh, well, I don't want to play 5. He goes to Boston. So now he's over here in Boston, he's playing. And then it's like, all right, I'm playing the 5 a little bit, rotating through. You know, you got some help there. But then I go to Philadelphia. Now I'm really playing the 4 because Joel Embiid is playing the 5, but he's not contributing as much. And now the perfect situation has arisen, really, where if they had Al Horford, I think, you know, it's a completely different situation. Now he's not the same Al Horford he was back in 2015 per se, but he's still a very solid and valuable contributor. So I think when you have that gaping hole and now you're trying to fill it by committee with Tice, Cantor, you know, a little bit of Robert Williams, not Robin Williams, and then just being able to mix that in, I think it's difficult. I personally think with Tice, like Tice is better like offensively, but I think Robert Williams' explosiveness and I think his ability to play on the defensive end could be a good contribution for them, just size for size with Bam Adebayo.
I think one of the biggest things is, sorry, Matt, is that, like, with the 5 situation, it's like Tice has ended up in foul trouble in, like, every single one of these games, so he hasn't really been on the court. So you have to play either both Williams or Cantor heavier minutes than what they probably would, because Tice would probably play somewhere in the realm of, like, high 30s, 40 minutes a game, because he's gives them a lot on the defensive end, and then offensively, he's a pretty good passer, and then they also get him around the rim a lot in those pick and rolls.
I think that's the X factor that, like, you know, the regular people are missing. And man-to-man, Spo's not an idiot. So he's going zone. Tice is out there at the 5 because then he just becomes a rim roller. Robert Williams is a better rim roller, but Tice is a better player against man. So Spo's doing this cat and mouse game too, if you're paying attention to how it kind of unfolds, which is interesting in its own right. I'm glad you brought it up.
Enes Kanter is frustrating just because he's very tempting. It's very tempting to want him put you in the game when you're not scoring enough, because you're like, I got to get some points. We got to get some points. But like a Ponzi scheme, he's basically a walking Ponzi scheme. You think you're like, okay, he's gonna get us some points, but then you look on the other end. Like, there's below average defenders. There's guys who are like, okay, you know he's going to contribute on the offensive end, and defense is going to be low. But he is so bad on the defensive end, consistently so bad that you have to, like, if I'm an assistant coach for the Celtics, you just got to be like, Brad, don't do it. Don't fall into the temptation, man. Because I would much rather have a guy that I know at least is going to contribute somewhat on the defensive end and try to win a game ugly, like 2002, man. Win a 2002 ugly style game than I would to trust Enes Kanter. And time again, he does nothing but give up everything.
Like we said, as like, you know, the NBA level is about matchups. So Brad may have to try and go small ball because of what you're getting, like you said, with Cantor and then with Williams. I'm pretty sure that's why Tice plays so much because of his IQ, and he knows the coverages and everything else. Where you put those two in, it's taking away some. He may have to just add, like I said, the backup point guard, like you said, one of y'all spoke on it, played very well with Kemba at one point. So he may have to go ahead and try that small ball a little bit more.
I agree. I think, right, Bam catching the ball on the block and dominate, that's not what he does. So make them try to beat you in some other way, right? Like whether it's playing small, like they got to do something.
I agree with you. Like if you watch the matchup when Tice is on the floor with Bam numbers are way. I mean, he started off the game the other night 1 for 5. Like when Tice is on the floor, he pushes Bam away, and if Bam doesn't get as many easy baskets, and so soon as Tice goes off the floor, here comes Bam. And so that's why his rebound, he doesn't get a lot of offensive rebounds because Tice does all those little things, and Tice has to stay on the floor for them, and he can't be in foul trouble. Like he gets those little, touchy fouls, or like he can't get those because it kills them. That could be a matchup that could be not even, but it can't be Bam getting 5 dunks in the third quarter either. That's what ends up happening. That can't happen versus that team. Tice has to be on the floor.
Yeah, their ball screen coverage is significantly better too in the rebounding when he's in the game. When he's not in the game, if you look at that stretch when Bam really started going off, a lot of it was kind of like what Matt was talking about with Enes Kanter, who is, infamous for putting up great offensive numbers in a small amount of time, but he's also notorious for defensively giving up so much. So I think Jimmy has a clip he's going to show too. Even when they do play small, that's when Bam is going to be great on the offensive glass and where they have to make sure they block out because, that's another area that he's so gifted in that even if he's not hurting you in the pick and roll, he'll hurt you on the second shot.
He did get a big rebound late in that game too, offensive rebound, right? It was a huge one.
That's the clip he's going to show.
So we'll jump in a little bit of turnovers. I got a lot of their clips. Obviously, we talked about 20 turnovers in game 2. I kind of broke it up into themes, just bad passes, right? Like this is low level, like just court awareness, like trying to thread needles, like make the solid play to me. Like this, whether it was off Wanamaker or not, I don't know. But, these 50-50 plays, like I think Kemba's got to be ready to shoot that too. And then you kind of throwing a bounce pass to a guard at the block, like that's probably not going to be the move. Like these are all just, and I thought this was really careless, right? You got last shot, right? Like this is, you're not going to, unless you get a point blank layup, like this isn't not what you want. Right? Do you want to win or not? Like that can't happen. Beginning of fourth quarter, this is a 2-point game, 6 minutes, throw that shit out of bounds. Like, again, Jimmy Butler, like ridiculous. Again, Jimmy Butler.
What was right on this game?
Like seriously, right? And then you see the last play, like for the Celtics here, and Jaylen Brown's calling for it. Jimmy Butler's just reading the situation. Like this is careless, man. Like it's just too simple. And we'll go through Kemba's stuff real quick. So I watched him closely game 2 after game 1. In situations, he was either ISO'd or he was the help guy. They forced the rotation. Miami was 11 of 12 attacking Kemba that game, responsible for 27 points directly. And you'll see it. Like, they're not doing anything crazy. Like, you can't get caught in that so easily. Like, and that's – like, he's got to be better. But, like, these ones, like, come on. Like, this is just – I'm sorry. Like, you're not a championship level team. Like, running a flex cut for a point guard and let him body you and just lay it in. Like, and there's a lot of them. Like, there's an ATO, quick 2-man game, get it back to him. Kemba's supposed to be really quick, like cause a rotation, kick out 3. Right, here we go. Jimmy Butler wants to get the switch with Kemba. Great. What do we got? Force Tatum to help. Kick out. Kemba now should be out. Instead, he's sitting there watching 3-ball.
He's just constantly on the side of his defender. He's constantly keeping his door open instead of closing and actually cutting people off.
Yep.
Just straight line drives. It's not even like they're making a move.
Miami runs this play all season long, right? Inbound, rip the inbounder, needs some resistance, right? You think, all right, we're going to do that. They go right back into the overtime. What do we got? elbow, rip him. Throw it in directly, nope. 2 go with him, 3 ball. And this was, Tyler Hero, game 2, rookie, lay him in. NBA All-Star, Team USA member, he's got to set the tone. If he's going to get scoring like that, he's going to put up 45 and do it efficiently too. That's, to me, whether you guys want to hit on either just the turnovers, Kemba, anything you guys see, please jump in.
It's almost like being in a park. I hate to say it with Kemba. It's like being in a park. Like, I know you can't guard me, so we're going to run the same thing all the time. Or whenever you're guarding me, I'm just going to – I hate to say it, my eyes going to light up. It's bad. And I know it's bad, but Jimmy, those clips makes it even worse. because it's like park. It's like being in a park. Like, yo, I know you can't hold me, so I'm going to kill you every time, and that's bad.
It wasn't like was here getting that film session where the coach kept rewinding it either.
Man. Hey, that man did a straight line drive from half court.
Yeah.
And just laid it up on him, man. Like, there was no counter move, no nothing, just straight line drive. Wow.
Straight to the rack.
His teammates are so used to it to a point they're not even getting mad no more.
Yeah. No reaction. It really wasn't no reaction off of that. Like you said, like they used to it.
Like, not fronting Jimmy Butler in the post when he's right in front of the rim. Like, I don't know how you don't get mad at that as a teammate, but you must be used to it. You know what I mean?
I think that's the biggest difference right now between Kemba and Jimmy is, like, both rosters are full of young dudes that haven't been in this moment before. And even though Kemba and Jimmy haven't necessarily been in this moment, like, Jimmy is the veteran making veteran plays that are helping win, and Kemba, for whatever reason, just isn't making that. He's not bringing that to the table for Boston, and that's why Miami's up 2-0.
Hey, let's talk about that too, that aspect of the bubble. That's another huge component of it. Like, Miami's got some young dogs. So in the bubble, what's one of the biggest things with young players, they say, is on the road. Yeah. So they're just waking up hooping in the bubble. So a lot of those young guys, it's just like, man, let's just go get down, pretty much.
Waking up hooping, they're used to playing in that gym. They're not playing in that perception. There's not worried about crowd noise. They're just and they're so together as a team. I think that's the one thing, like somebody touched on earlier with Phoenix playing so well. Like, Phoenix never played well. They lost all the time on the road. So in the bubble, it's a different environment. So there's something about what Miami has going that they're in such a groove, and they're just kind of clicking. And, they have established leadership. They have Iguodala on the roster. They have Jimmy Butler, who hasn't won a championship, but he's just such a veteran and such a dog. And then they have Jay Crowder, who, those guys are both Marquette. They play.
Hey, don't forget UD. He's huge over there. He's not playing.
Yep.
Udonis
I was going to say that, Lamar.
I was going to say that. Great point, LB. They just have a veteran locker room with those young guys that are kind of infusing crazy confidence in those dudes. And you would think that you would be having clips of Tyler Hero and Duncan getting chopped up like that on film, but really it's Kemba.
Something I think is interesting too, and not that I put too much stock in it because, go either way, but Miami doesn't really bitch about fouls, right? Like, for a young team, like, they're not complaining. They only had 14 free throws. You could easily look and be like, oh, Miami's going to have more free throws. They won the game. Like, end of the game, get fouled, all that stuff. Like, they just play. Like, they're not sitting there complaining. They're just hooping. And, Jimmy Butler, I think, sets the tone because he's just a dude, like, whatever. Like, he's not really fazed by much. And I appreciate that. It's just good basketball to watch.
There's also, like, less trying to draw the foul, too, right? Like, less head flaring and kicking out on shots and all. Like, they are just playing. I also kind of have a theory about the bubble that, like, guys that are young and like to party more are starting to really feel it at this point, and it's affecting them psychologically because they've been in there for a long time now and they don't really get to get out. And I think that's like draining them a little bit. Whereas guys that really love to hoop are really dialed in, like some of you guys said right now, like, hey, I'm just hooping. This is what I do. This is my job.
Going back to what someone said earlier about the bubble, about Miami almost playing like a college team. Well, think about the bubble and like the NCAA tournament where you're playing on more neutral sites, and you might have fans, you have virtual fans, but like you have rich alumni that come, but it's not like the student section at a game where basically you're in that one spot for a weekend. There's less travel. So that means the guys that are superstars that are just more physically gifted than everyone else combined with the mental stuff, they don't have to – the role players don't have to work with the travel as much. They can be at their best. And when you have a team that has so many great role players, they're able to be at their best every night. Now, I'm not no scientist. I can't say how much travel affects that, but I'm just wondering if you don't have to rely as much on superstars in a bubble setting, even if your superstars are great.
Something I've learned about the NBA is role players play much better at home. And that's pretty standard across the board. And like you're kind of removing that whole thing. And clearly we talked about Boston being top heavy, right? They got, the 3 guys that are healthy and Gordon Hayward hopefully come back and Marcus Smart's played above his level. But, maybe Jimmy Butler's a superstar, maybe he's not. Maybe Bam's on his way to being a superstar, maybe he's not. But those other dudes are the ones that are winning. The Jay Crowders that we talked about, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, when his numbers called, Dragic turning back the clock a little bit. Like, there's something to be said about that.
One thing I would touch on is I look at it in like 3 different ways. We talked about, Jimmy Butler, Kemba Walker, being that veteran, having that, presence mindset. Kemba Walker's been to the playoffs only twice before this. And they were both first round exits. So it's like Kemba Walker, he doesn't have that playoff experience to that degree. He's a very respected player and all-star and all that stuff, but he doesn't have that playoff veteran experience in any capacity. And I think it really hurts that they don't have Gordon Hayward.
Yeah.
And, because, dude's been to the playoffs. Dude's played in the playoffs in the West. A much tougher conference in the past decade that we've seen over time, having that veteran presence. And, you mentioned Udonis Haslem, but what I feel like people, it goes like unnoticed. Eric Spoelstra is a 2-time championship coach. I don't think it's talked about enough, even in the eyes of the media when we talk about Brad Stevens, we talk about a lot of these things. Eric Spoelstra, granted, he did have LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, all that. What in today's society, what coach didn't that won these championships? Steve Kerr, Doc Rivers, all these guys, what coach didn't have that? And, so being able to make adjustments and make big-time plays, one thing I'll never forget, that Game 7 LeBron shot against the Spurs, that was an ATO. That came right out of a timeout. So, granted, they did have that pick and roll. They had a pick and roll or whatever slip. Guy came back. But it's like something was drawn up. Coach Spoelstra didn't just say, all right, whatever, we're going to go, hope for the best. Having that veteran presence all the way across the board, I feel like makes a huge difference for the Heat.
Very good points. So I want to hit on this a little bit, just kind of talk. This was game 2 alone, and we've already hit on one of them. But, this is from the jump, right? 10 minutes in the first quarter, kick out, offensive rebound. Crowder not afraid of the moment, pulling it again, right? Again, first 4 minutes, Jimmy misses. Duncan hunting these shots, right? Can't lose him.
Marcus Smart leaking out.
That's it, right? Let that dude get going. Right, here we go again, another momentum changing. Boston's up 9. Tyler Hero, offensive rebound putback. Right? Everyone watching. Jimmy Butler tips it out. Drive, dunk. And just like the will to win, right? Shots going up, 3 seconds on the shot clock. Derrick Jones Jr. getting involved. Kick out, 3, misses it, another offensive rebound. Right? These are big. And then this is going to be an adjustment I want to talk about too. And if you guys saw it or not, but you see Tice on Crowder and Jaylen Brown on Bam. This play was slow coming up the court too. This is by design. This isn't mismatch and whatever. But you see Jaylen Brown covering Bam, pick and roll, Kemba's kind of watching the eyes of Dragic, makes the wrong read, wide open 3 miss, right? But you got 4 guys here from the Celtics. Bam's going to get the ball, right? This is the offensive rebound we're talking about. So if they are going to play small, Jaylen Brown needs to be a lot tougher. Now, they end up turning the ball over. It could have been really costly, and it wasn't. But just thinking about game 3 and what they're possibly looking at, if Tyson's going to play Crowder for whatever reason, I don't think that's a good idea. But we'll talk about this. I want to hit on these next 4 clips. I think we have 4 or 5 clips. Miami doing a great job playing out of the elbows in the post, as they have all year with Bam. And talking about the off-ball cutting is huge, right? Like they're able to throw it in, and these cuts, like, just so easy to get easy buckets.
This is exactly what Stevens was talking about them resembling the Warriors.
And Kelly Olynyk's able to get a bucket on Grant Williams like that. These just can't happen because the Celtics are not getting these, so you can't allow them, right? Playing off the pinch, Gaggle on the weak side. Tyler gives it up. They're playing. Another back cut. Easy. Again, pretty much transition. Bam finds him cutting to the rim. And I do think so. Miami hasn't really gone to this much. I think they probably will start showing it a little bit more, which their elbow stuff. And so they rip them. They do a good job defending it. I think you're going to start to see Miami go to a little bit more as the intensity picks up, something they're more comfortable with. But we'll get into the shot selection in a minute. But anything on playing out of the post, any other stuff we just kind of talked about, anything you guys want to talk about?
Hey, Jim, I want a quick question. I know you had to, and this goes back earlier. When you broke down that zone when you broke down the zone, what was the percentage in the second half when they inverted? Did you break that down? When you broke down when they play zone in the second half, in game 2? I know you.
I didn't break it down that way. I didn't see a huge difference in what it was. They caused more turnovers in the second half.
Exactly, because Tatum had 4 turnovers in that second half, and Marcus Smart had 3.
Yeah,
and that's why I was wondering, like, what was the cause on that? That's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Was it?
And that'll kind of be the next point too, is talking about the difference of first half and second half too. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, go ahead and jump into that, Jimmy.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So I really thought this was interesting. This is just shot selection. I was curious. I was looking at shot charts, and I'll go to the next slide here. So just look at it real quick, right? Like first half, second half, game 1, game 2, right? You see Boston, made 8 in the first half, first game, then 4 in the second half. First half, game 2, 16, but only 7 in the second half. But look at Miami's. Like, they're pretty consistent, and they're getting to the rim. And I'll show you the clips to back it up. But Miami going 11-12 at the rim in the second half of that game 2, like, Boston needs an answer. And just the difference of easy open shots is, that's how you win, playoff games. And these are the shots that Miami is getting in the second half. This is game 2, right? Like, uncontested dunk, pick and roll. Again, Marcus Smart, low man, not good enough. Switching, fine. Dragic, easy. Like, these are just layups, dunks.
I don't think you can beat a team that's 11 of 12 at the rim in the second half. Like,
probably not, right? Like, and then just flip side, like, let's look at Boston, some of their 2s at the paint. Like, Tice driving to the rim, probably not what you want. And this Tatum one, right? Yeah, it's a paint shot, but it's a floater. It's not a layup. Not as efficient. Kemba Walker driving in there, not big enough. Again, Wanamaker, right? Slop. It's just going to be sloppy. Jaylen Brown, finger roll, tougher shot. Kemba, can these shots be made? Yeah, right? Like, I don't think anyone's disputing that any of those shots are not makeable, but there's a difference between a dunk and a layup compared to a floater, runner, finger roll.
And it's just down the stretch of games. It's kind of like we've been talking about their execution down the stretch and their ability to create easy baskets down the stretch is so they have to work so hard to get those baskets, and they're already fatigued. They already have a limited amount of depth, so it just puts more pressure. And I think that's where Tatum shoots some of those sidestep, settled threes. It's like, I'd rather just try to make a hero shot than really grind at this because I'm already tired. It's already hard enough, and they're not doing anything to create enough easy baskets.
Yep.
It's crazy when you think back real quick, like when Isaiah Thomas used to play for them, and they just seemed like they had so much more offense that they ran and so much more execution, and they were more dissection of a team. It seemed like they played more like how Miami plays, where you don't really know where the bucket's going to come from, and then Isaiah Thomas would just kind of lift up and make some shots too. But it's really surprising to see. Sorry, Coach Fernandez. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good. I was actually jumping in on you. My apologies. I think one thing that I kind of noticed in those clips as a difference there is that it looks like Boston is trying to go with the NBA philosophy of guarding 2 with 2, like in the pick and roll, not helping from other spots. And it looks like Miami is conceding like, hey, we're going to have to use some help defense. We're going to have to, either a dig at the ball or stunt at the ball or whatever. And it looks like by doing that, they're causing Boston to pull up from a little bit farther away and make them take more contested or worse shots.
I agree.
Very much so. Middle. I also think, like, even to what you were saying, like, it looks like they're baiting them. Like, you're like watching and like you see like there's like a little, like, even in the zone or whether it's man to man, there's like those little gaps. They're like leaving them to come in, and then they all just collapse in on them right when that comes in. And I think for looking at those stats, for those numbers to be so different from half to half, I really think that comes down to coaching as well. Like, second half adjustments, what things have we noticed, and for them to be so successful in the first half, and then to see that shot production drop significantly right there in consecutive games, definitely has to have some coaching adjustments come into play.
Cool. Last part of the
they're daring them to do it.
Yeah,
they're daring them to do it, and they won't do it. And like I said, those guys either going to listen or they're not. that's what it's going to come down to.
Last little part of the video section I want to cover. Seen this posted, and so I want to look at it a little bit more closely. And I didn't do a ton of video on this part, but I did pull up the analytics and what the numbers said, second spectrum and the NBA stats. So was it real, right? And so this is every matchup that Marcus had so far, what he's done, and you see he's held opponents to 9 of 21, 43%. It's slightly better than average, but he's letting up a lot of threes, right? Like getting lost. You see the one from Duncan get loose early in the game. He's only forced 1 turnover. He has 3 shooting fouls. And giving up 32 points in 2 games as a defensive stopper isn't good enough for me. Maybe you guys can steer me wrong, and we could watch the film again too and kind of go through it. He's definitely done some good things, but any stopper can't allow 32 points, no matter how you look at it. For me, like 16 points a game in playoffs, especially when they don't have an elite offensive one-on-one player, I don't think that's getting it done. So just, like we kind of already talked about, he can't go under this. Like, I don't care the angle. I don't care what the situation is. Duncan needs to get going early, and he does, and he gets one there. And I just showed this one too, like evident, low man. Boston's playing the guy weak side tagged in. However, they're not leaving Duncan on this side. So I don't think you got to be face guarding over here. You're still getting the low man. You're the rotation guy on the backside in case Butler's going there. But Marcus leaves the rim. Like, that turns his back to it. It is more than just defending your guy one-on-one. That's what they had for the film, and I'm curious to more so to see it going forward. Game 3, can he be better? What the intensity level is going to be like? But I didn't see enough out of him rather than what I'm used to.
Jimmy, on that last clip, would that be attributed to him?
Yeah, that's his. For me, that's his fault. Because the Celtics do pull in.
I agree that from my perspective, that's his fault as well. I'm just wondering how Second Spectrum would stat that, like the numbers that you're showing.
No, that was that's his matchup. So that doesn't even get attributed to him on that for that purpose. That would be more so like, hey, let's go back and watch. That might have been a Tice in a sense, but I think you need to be more cognizant. Jaylen Brown covering Duncan Robinson on the weak side. Hey, weak side step ups going on. They hit this pocket. Low man's going. I'm the sink guy. I got to be ready for that guy in the dunk or however it shakes out. Marcus just leaves early into dunk. That's not, you can't have that.
Yeah, I wonder twofold. I wondered, one, without making any excuses for him, how much is the wear and tear and fatigue messing with him? And then two, I just wondered, averaging 30 assists a game is like their head spinning a little bit because they don't know where it's coming from. Or like right there, it looked like he might have threw a baseline drive, baseline drift to Butler. So he kind of was like, oh, let me go find Butler. But then it's like the way they share the ball makes it where it's not typical NBA basketball of just isolation. Let me lock in on my guy and do a great job guarding the ball. Like you said, you can't go into ball screens on a shooter like Duncan, especially first play of the game. But I wonder how much of it has to do with just, those two things kind of affecting the way he normally would be able to defend and impact.
I also think that, like, in that clip, like, having Jaylen Brown face guard Robinson there puts Smart in a bad spot because if he helps on the roll, Jimmy's wide open. And if he stays on Jimmy, Bam's wide open. So it's kind of like, you know, do you just live with your rotations or do you kind of keep that and just give up, you know, one of those options?
Great point, Alex. Anytime, from my experience, anytime you do the full face guard off the ball, it does throw off your rotation significantly, and you're not used to practicing that. So I think that's a good point. We're kind of shifting to the fourth quarter, so we'll kind of close things up and just pick you guys' brain on what matchups you would change, what adjustments would you make, what ball screen coverage, what substitution pattern. We'll just kind of go each guy get a chance to say what kind of adjustments they would make, and then we're going to try to create, if we can get everybody's number in the chat, I think we do have, we're going to try to create some type of group chat so we can stay in touch kind of during the week. We're going to shift next Saturday to the Lakers series, so we won't actually cover this series in depth, but we can at least kind of stay connected if you guys want to or you're interested in that. We'll get all your contact to Jimmy through the chat, but yeah, let's just kind of unmute yourself and just kind of say some of your thoughts on what you would do differently in the next time around in game 3, and then we'll close out.
I'll be kind of interested to hear, like, some of your guys' perspective on, like, because I feel like whenever, like, Miami's, like, in drop on the pick and roll, like, Boston typically, like, gets into the paint and usually gets something good out of it. Like, when they have, like, Bam or, like, Kelly Olynyk drops in the pick and roll, like, you think, like, Miami would maybe, like, shorten it up a little bit, maybe not, like, full hard hedge, but, like, kind of just, like, bring him up so he doesn't get as deep to more corral the ball?
Yeah, I like what they're doing, mixing it up, especially with Kemba. Kemba can't get a rhythm. In Tatum, too, they were a little bit more aggressive, even off-ball screens, which I think is unique. You don't see it a lot. I hope, just from being a coach, that Brad, you know, starts slipping out when Tatum's involved in off-ball screens. You get a quick lob and all that type of stuff if Miami wants to be that aggressive. Like, you're not seeing these guys slip out just because teams aren't really blitzing much in the NBA, but I've seen a lot from Brad from his Butler days being really good against matchup zones, 2-3 zones, teams that switch, him slipping out. So I think he needs to, you know, maybe these guys are stubborn. You know, Tatum's a really good player. Brown's a good player. Kemba's done it. But they need to take the coaching. I think he needs to step in and really be a force for them to try to win the series and come back at least.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I know on the defensive end, how I would look at matchups, and I thought this is what they would do from the beginning. Kemba still got to stay with Dragic. He may kill him, but I think Marcus Smart has to guard Jimmy Butler. I think it eliminates him a little bit more. Marcus is smart enough and physical enough. He'll play physical. But then you can't allow Duncan Robinson or Hero that you still have to put size on them. So I think Jaylen Brown has to be the guy to guard those two guys. I just think his length will bother them. They shoot the ball a little bit different. I guarantee if you go back and look at it, he may have made 1 or 2 on Jaylen Brown, but a lot of those shots were against smaller guys early in the game. Tatum goes to Crowder, not as physical as Jimmy, and then Tice, like I said, Tice has to be on the floor more. But I think those matchups, it's going to be cross matchups at times. But Brown needs to stay on Hero or Duncan Robinson because he's a little bit more disciplined defensively with shooters, and Smart just has to match up with Jimmy from a physical standpoint.
Tell me this, LB. I know you scout a lot of NBA stuff. So with them switching so much, how do you handle the matchups when you're switching? Do you stay with your matchup? Do you still switch?
I mean, the way that you almost have to stay with your matchups because the way you keep talking about it, how they move, how they cut so well, they move well without the ball. I think you have to. I mean, it's not like the only time they're in pick and roll situation is when they're running Bam a lot of times in those ball screen situations. And that's the other thing. Do you decide to start trapping Dragic on those ball screens and then just make Bam, you know, you dump it to Bam and then he has to make a decision? Bam is really good in that spot, but you got to switch up the coverages, man, on the ball screen coverages because they are killing them with overloading on the strong side, putting the shooter on the weak side, and then it puts Jaylen Brown in a. It's not. It's supposed to be his role, but then you giving up the open three on the weak side. So I think you got to kind of switch some coverages up as you go. Whether it's going to be trapping that ball screen right away, or if you're just gonna, but you can't keep hard hedging and then if you allow him to turn the corner and scoring on that, or as Dragic turned the corner on Grant Williams one time, or you just got to switch those coverages up. They're very comfortable in their offense right now.
Yep.
I'm giving.
Go ahead, Don. We'll go Matt.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback on that. Coach kind of beat me to it, but Adebayo has been killing the Celtics when they go into their ice coverages by just getting out of it early and slipping into that pocket or diving down for the lobs. I think he's doing like 1.16 points per possession when he's the roller on plays.
Yeah.
No way to deal with him on those ices. That's for sure.
That's good. Where'd you get the analytics from, Dominic? I like it.
I found that on I was watching a YouTube video by this guy that does some pretty good stuff. It's called like Coach Daniel is the channel. Good stuff.
I like it.
Okay, I'm doing two things. One, I'm giving Enos Cantor the wrong directions to the gym. That just takes it. Two, going back to what we were talking about with Jason Tatum not being aggressive enough, and even Kemba Walker to an extent. I'm starting the game. I gotta run some things that allows either Jalen or Kemba, just design plays for them that force them to be aggressive, not just like take a three. I'm talking. We gotta find some way to allow them to get movement, to get contact early, to not be afraid. Because when we go, any basic basketball mind knows that you can't be tentative against the zone. You can't be tentative against a good defensive team. Well, you just can't play when you're being tentative. And you've got to figure out ways to get them to be more aggressive in a freelance situation. It's one of those situations where you're like, well, when we set things up for them, it's good. But how are we going to get it so that mentality's there from the get-go? Let's take this.
I'm with, I forgot, one of you guys pointed on it earlier. He was talking about how great Spoelstra is. He's a championship coach, and he's been playing chess. And both of these coaches are elite. But I really believe that Miami has the huge advantage if you really go back to the regular season before the bubble and how they were always using their bench effectively. So now a lot of those guys are so comfortable, but that's where their unselfishness comes in at. I really believe a lot of the guys from Boston, like when they use their bench, that's why it's not as effective, especially as we go along and it gets later in these playoffs because of these moments. They're not built for the moments. I think no matter what Boston does to adjust, I think Miami has a counter adjustment in place. And he's waiting to use his hand if he's got to use his hand because Spoelstra's been doing a great job of finding something that works and picking on it right now. It's like he's still got stuff in his back pocket. So I'm just loving the way that this series is developing. Hopefully, Celtics do make some changes so we can see some of Miami changes. But I think Miami just that much deeper to where they're going to figure it out.
And Darrell, you just said something that was good. Like, see, I always thought Spoelstra was really good coming into games and like already predetermining if they do this, what they do that. I just never thought, to me, he was never a in game. He didn't adjust doing the end game. Like, you go back and look at Dallas in 2011. So I look at a lot of those games back then. Like, I just didn't think he did a great job of adjusting in game. And that's why I thought a lot of times he sat down with Pat Riley, and I was like, is Pat kind of coaching him through this? Because when teams made adjustments, he just wasn't good at it. And so now my thing, like you just said, is he already said, okay, if they do this, I'm doing this. If they do this, and so they prepare for it. But if Boston comes out and they do something that he hasn't seen or something different, I don't know how well he is when it comes to that a lot of times. I think he's just a lot of times he's predetermined. And I would say the other night, I don't know if that was Chris Quinn's decision to invert the wings or not. I want to say it was him that made that decision. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like he makes the final decision, but I think Chris Quinn had a lot to do with that the other night. I guarantee he did.
Yeah, I think Spo, to give him credit too, I mean, just to be able to go through some tough years after LeBron, and still kind of survive and keep them competitive. But now they're really playing a kind of completely different way than they played then. So credit to him kind of evolving and how he's put in the system. But they have their Heat way. Their culture is all about the Miami Heat way. So I think that they really have those guys that are bought into that. And, you know, the crazy part about this series, even we talk about adjustments, like, again, Bam doesn't get that block is a different feeling for Celtics right now. You know, they lost in overtime when they played well enough to win, and then they're up 17 last game. So they played well enough to win. To me, it comes down to a lot of it is just the closing minutes and some of the details. You got to clean up. Kemba has to give better resistance. They have to figure out something for the bench to get another spark, just to keep some freshness. You know, you look at obviously the Lakers, we haven't talked about that game, but they got beat pretty bad. Denver did last night, but there was a point in time where Jokic and Jamal Murray on the bench for foul trouble, but they kind of cut the lead, you know, like they have enough bench too. Like they gotta figure out some ways to manufacture some energy from the bench just to give them a spark so that in the second half they can actually close the game the way that they really want to. I think Boston's gonna. I mean, they're a competitive bunch. They got a lot of high level dudes. I think they'll come out and play well. It's just a matter of can they close the game in the winning minute. Who's gonna make the clutch plays? Because again, it's like Jimmy Butler has made a bunch of them on both sides, and he's kind of been their clutch closer. And Tatum hasn't quite made those plays just yet. And I do think they also have to get Tatum playing more from the elbows, playing more inside the arc, not always having to earn every basket from almost like Giannis, right? He's always behind the three-point line, having to create from so far out. That's wear and tear on the fatigue of your body too. So those are some of the small things that I would say. I don't know if I would not let Enes Kanter go to the gym, but
wrong directions.
I don't know him so much, man. But we'll let Jimmie O kind of have some closing thoughts, and then we'll do this again next Saturday. Talk about the Lakers series, break that down. Feel free, man, fellas. This is a collaborative thing. This is not about us coming in as experts, but if you get more analytics, Dominic, on some stuff, and you want to talk about it, bring it, man. If you have anybody that has anything that they want to share, I mean, feel free. That's what this is about, us talking hoops and growing in the game. But we'll let thanks everybody again for coming. Thanks, Rising Coaches, and we'll let Jimmie O close us out.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody, especially the guys that kind of hung on in here the whole time. It means a lot. I love talking hoops. I talk hoops all day long if I could. Like you said, this is much more of a collaborative effort more than anything. I think we both have the same thoughts in mind. Like the way I'm thinking about it now is kind of like college football game day, where those guys talk about the games that are going to happen. Like this is what it was. Like this is where they've been. This is where it should be going. How it's going to look. And obviously the Celtics play Game 3 tonight. Next week, if the Lakers series can be Game 4 or something like that. But if you guys have any feedback on this, please, my number's in the chat. Hit me. Anything you want to talk about hoop-wise, I can help you talk X and O's. You can help me. Shit, I'm all for it. Trust me, I'm here to learn too. Any advice that you guys have on this, what you guys want to change, what you liked, what you didn't like, I'm not going to take offense to it by any means. Anything I can share, please reach out. But I appreciate you guys. I'm going to turn off the recording now, so anything you guys say can